Hi, Emily. Thank you very much for being in this program.
Hey, how are you?
Good. Absolutely fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. Emily, at the age of 10, something happened in your life. Your parents got divorced, and that was for the second time.
Right.
Take us from there.
Definitely,
Take us from there.
sure, of course. It definitely was a confusing time for me because I feel like I was still in a huge developmental stage and I necessarily couldn't understand what love and what was love and what wasn't because it was quite
Hmm.
confusing
Hmm.
seeing a broken marriage and then seeing one that worked. And I knew my parents loved one another. It just necessarily wasn't a fit.
Hmm.
So when I saw the marriage end for a second time, it was my thought process kind of changed, I guess I would say. And then my parents split up. I moved and I stayed with my mom. And at 10 years old, I started being groomed sexually. And
Hmm.
when I turned 11, I was raped. And that pretty much started a landslide of continuous rapes from multiple people. And I like to call it, I wouldn't say I like to call it, but it was necessarily just me being passed around, and it distorted my views 100% on what love was, what sex was for, what my body was for, what I was for as a woman. I didn't understand that I was more than what someone had taught me my worth was.
Hmm.
And experiencing that and going through that really left me broken.
Hmm.
And that totally just funneled into, by the time I was 13, I was fully drinking alcohol at the extent a 21-year-old couldn't even do.
Hmm.
My parents had no clue. I was self-medicating. How do you look at your parent? You see your single mom, you see your single dad, and they're struggling financially. They're going through all these things in a separate household. And you as a child, you're so innocent in your mind. You think, I don't want to burden them.
Hmm.
So how could I tell them this is going to hurt them even more? So
Hmm.
I suffered silently as a child. And I would say maybe that's where my inner strength came from, but also it was my own self demise because I was a child and I didn't need to bear that burden. And it just, it destroyed me. And from the alcohol, it came drugs. And then it was putting myself in scenarios I didn't need to be in, and spiraling depression, anxiety, PTSD. And at the age of 15, I was a full blown alcoholic. I was taking prescription pills. I was numbing the pain. I was failing out of high school. I literally hated who I was, and I didn't even have a chance to get to know who I was.
Hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
it's so horrible when we look around and
Hmm.
we correlate at this age of the young age of 14, and you have these children that say, like myself, I hate my life, I hate everything I've been through, and I have no chance of being successful, and we don't even know who we are. It's and that's kind of why as I've gotten to where I'm at now, that's what's got the ball rolling for me, is that promise that so many children like myself didn't know that there was a greater hope.
Hmm.
And through that, when I was 14 years old, I had tried to commit suicide multiple times, failed attempts, which thank God were failed attempts because no one in their right mind genuinely wants to take their life. I truly believe. I feel like it's just a dark place that we go through, and I was suffering silently. And to make it even worse, I was put into a cop car, handcuffed, taken to the hospital, and handcuffed to a bed. And someone watched me. So in that brokenness, I was treated like a prisoner.
Hmm.
And as a child, I started to see, I was like, the system is so broken
Hmm.
for children to be treated that way that are hurting.
Yeah.
And then that went to an extended stay at a mental institute where I sat with adults that had schizophrenia
Hmm.
and had taken pills so long they didn't know who they were or what age they were in. They were wearing diapers, and I was this 14-year-old girl
Hmm.
in the midst of chaos. And the average stay at this facility was 4 to 7 days, and I was there 14 days and nights on Thanksgiving.
Hmm.
And it broke my parents' heart because they didn't understand what was going on. It was just, it seemed like the average teenager acting out, and they had no idea. And I never told them
Hmm.
that, they were like, where is all this coming from? I don't understand. And I felt like I had no support system, and it wasn't their fault at all. I'm not saying that, but I suffered so silently.
Hmm.
And going through the mental institution that I went to, it just, that broke me even more. because I was in such a fragile state as a child and a young woman to have gone through multiple rapes, gone through, molestations, alcohol, drug addiction, to go somewhere like that. That's not, children that are broken need love. Yes, sometimes they need hard love, but a lot of times they are lacking in that love area and that understanding, and they just need to be wrapped up because they don't know how to say, I need help. So that really just set me aside, and I feel like almost plummeted my struggle even more. So when I got out of the institution, I told my parents, I was like, I really want to trade schools because I had made a name for myself. I was a drug addict. I was pushing pills at school. My freshman year of high school, I was drugged our homecoming weekend and woke up to a sophomore having sex with me. And I ran out into the middle of the party with no pants on. So everyone assumed what I was doing was no good. And just, how high school is. So I lost that respect factor, and my parents finally agreed. It wasn't something they wanted to do. I changed schools. That was the best thing that ever happened to me. Totally changed my perspective. I wanted to fit in, and in my head, and any child's head that goes through that, it's like a reset button. We go in and we're like, let me go somewhere else where no one knows me. I have this whole story I can create, and no one has to know who I was, the damaged, the broken. And that was the agreement that we came to. My therapist was like, we will do outpatient work. As long as you continue coming to see me, you can stay out. And I was like, this is a good deal. I'll take it. So I was continually seeing her throughout the weeks. And I probably spent the first few months to myself because my first day, I had a guy offer to give me a ride home. And I was a sophomore, and he was a senior, and I was just overwhelmed with his kindness. And like I said, the being able to differentiate what love is for me was very distorted. So he was being kind to me, telling me I was pretty, and I was like, I don't want to be the new girl that turns down this, this jock. I want to be nice to him. And he was like, okay, I'll take you home. And we passed his driveway, and we passed my driveway, and I was kind of like, why are we not going to my house? He was like, we just got to go to my house really quick. It'll be just a second. And when we got there were no cars there. And I was like, okay, I'm uncomfortable. Like, I know where this is going. And I went in his house, and being a victim for so long, you almost play the victim. And I hate to say that, but I know that, and I've lived that. And we necessarily don't know how to stand up and say enough is enough. Absolutely. When you're a victim. And he just came after me, and he shoved his hands into my pants and just started to take advantage of me. And I remember feeling so small, and everything that went through my head was, not again. You let this happen to you again. You're a victim. You're useless. And it just set me back so badly. And luckily my mom called because I was supposed to be home my first day of school. So I was in trouble. So that kind of saved me. He took me home. He didn't talk to me after that because I wouldn't sleep with him. But he pretty much sexually assaulted me. And I spent the next 2 months eating in the bathroom at school because I was so ashamed to show my face. I was the new girl who slipped up and was the whore, and it destroyed me. And I never thought I was going to be able to have friends. And when I finally started to make friends, oh man, it is crazy. Sorry. I started hanging out with this crowd, and I started to feel like I fit in, and I had the opportunity to be this cool girl, and they invited me to a party. And I was like, do I say no or do I go? So I made the choice to go to fit in. And when I got there, of course, no one knows because new story, new Emily. No one knows I have an alcohol problem. I'm 14 years old. Who looks at a 14-year-old and expects them to have an alcohol problem? Well, then the alcohol starts being passed around, and they want to have drinking contests, and I can keep up because I want to fit in. So I began to drink with all of the guys and all the girls, and slowly I start to lose control of the situation and my surroundings. And a good friend of mine, a very good friend of mine, took me aside and said, you do not need to drink anymore. I'm going to put you in my truck, and I'll come back and check on you. When he came back, I was gone. And a man, which of course I'm trying very hard not to say his name, he found me unconscious and dragged me by my feet away from the party. And he brutally raped me and beat me. And then he drew, I have never even shared this part because I was so embarrassed and so ashamed, but he brought a crowd over and they watched him rape me and no one did anything. And I was, like I said, here comes that victim part where in my head, I was saying stop and I was saying no. And I was trying to get the words out and I'm so intoxicated. I don't know how to even handle this situation. But one thing that I know is my brain has trained me that I'm a victim. Yeah. So I didn't fight the way that I should have fought. I was just terrified, and the underlying PTSD that I hadn't had diagnosed because no one knew I had been raped before. So I had just been self-medicating those things. And then when this rape finally happened, I was so out of control and so lost that I was just angry. I was so upset and so just discouraged is the word that I like to use. I was discouraged to be a woman. I was discouraged to be who I was. And when I finally came to and I woke up, I was completely naked and I was laying on the ground and I had been beaten, taken advantage of in any way you could possibly imagine. And it came down to the fact of I was afraid to tell anyone. So I went home, and for about a week, I had alcohol poisoning so bad. When I would go to the bathroom, there would be blood, and I would be vomiting blood. And I didn't want to tell anyone because I was scared, and my mom kind of knew something was wrong, and I just became very secluded in myself. And those thoughts were coming back that I wasn't worthy. And so I made up this story. Like I said, again, this childhood mind, a lot of stuff was underdeveloped for me because of things that I went through at such a young age. Stuff that you would expect someone to know at my age, I really didn't have the skills to understand. So when I would go and see my therapist, I was like, I've got to get this out. So in my head, my coping skill, I started telling her about my friend. My friend had been raped and I don't know how to help her. So I did that for probably 2 or 3 visits, which were spanned over 3 months, 2 or 3 visits each month. And finally, the last day, I was walking out and my therapist walked up to me and she grabbed me, and I will never forget this. And she looked me in my face and she said, please tell your friend that she's going to be okay. Please tell your friend that someone loves her and that she is going to make it and that she is worthy. And tears just filled my eyes. And I just began to cry and scream and wail. And I finally owned that. And I said, this happened to me. And I had never I had never said anything about anything that ever happened to me. So it was this empowering, terrifying moment because it opens, a lot of people don't understand being on the side of actually being a rape victim, especially when you say something. And with the generation that we're in right now and the crisis that we face with the contradictions of rape cases and how they're misplayed, how people use them for political issues and reasons and leverage, it's very hard to go into a trial. So we took it to trial and it destroyed me. I was painted not as a victim, but as a whore. Those words were used in a courtroom, that I was a whore, an alcoholic. They pulled my medical history, which included my mental hospital stay, and pretty much bombarded the case. It was horrible. But he did admit to a lot of things and went to jail. And a lot of people ask me, they're like, how do you feel? You're so brave. You're so brave. That's always messages that I get. And for my posts and my blogs, they're like, you are so brave for coming out. I commend you. There's these women that keep this inside. And, I'm totally happy for those women that do. But the system tears down victims. It's so bad. As far as the way that I felt after going through that, it's unexplainable. And he went to jail for 9 months. My now husband and I were getting our first property, and we went and got a rental house.
And you never expected that you are going to move to a place where your rapist is already staying.
I moved in next to my rapist. I still laugh about that because I'm at a place where I've dealt with it, and it's just like, what insanity involves something like that happening? That sounds like a literal book. And I was like, oh, well, I should probably do something about that. But we moved in next to my rapist, and it was hell. I thought I had walked through hell, and I had no clue. He would sit at the end of my driveway every morning and rev his motor until I opened the blinds and looked at him, and then he would flip me the bird or like yell things at me, and then I would see him. And I'll never forget, I went into Walmart and we bashed buggies. And I looked up and I said, oh, excuse me, I'm so sorry. And I made eye contact with my rapist. And I was like, holy hell, I have to get out of this town. Like this, it was just such a horrible feeling. And
and your husband knew that he was the rapist.
Yeah, he did. My husband did. Actually, this is something I've never shared with anyone, and God's really been messing with me about it. But I felt like socially and, you know, in my marriage space, that I wasn't at a place where I could share this and be able to defend it. But my husband was my good friend that put me in the truck, and I haven't shared that with anyone. That'll be in my book. And that was something that destroyed our relationship, because he had no idea that he was leaving me behind for something like that to happen. And he didn't know my past. We were just good friends, and then we ended up dating. And once we finally got married, it was just like this weight, because I was broken, so broken. He felt horribly guilty, because not that it was his fault by any means. And I definitely want to stress that, because that's one reason that I haven't shared that information with the world yet, because I feel like a lot of people would misunderstand or misinterpret what happened. But yes, my husband was there when I got raped, and in a sense he did leave, but he had no intention of that happening to me. And we were children, and it's something that shaped us into who we are. My husband was there for every trial, every case, every event that ever happened. He was there. But it, like I said, it took a toll on us. And there were many times when I had no idea how we were going to make it as a couple, because I was angry with him. I needed someone to blame. I needed somebody to be pissed off at. I was pissed off at myself, but why not blame my husband? I'm married. Why didn't you save me? You're, you know, this husband, you paint, you know, the umbrella, how it works with God. It's the umbrella with your husband, your wife, and then your children, and then God first. And I couldn't wrap my head around it, but I was also broken. I was in a place where I couldn't understand that it had nothing to do with him, but I just wanted to be mad at somebody. And I cannot believe I shared that. Oh my, like I'm kind of freaking out a little bit, because I never thought I would share that. But we were actually discussing that on the way. He said, you know, if you feel like it's time for you to share that, I can take it, baby. He was like, I can take it if you want to tell the world. It doesn't matter what anyone thinks, because you know, and I know that, you know, our marriage is stable, and we were children and we had no control over that. And we were actually about to celebrate our 2-year anniversary. On Sunday. And we overcame that. And he has been there through so much PTSD. He literally would wake up in the middle of the night to me, and I would be trying to fight my husband, because my PTSD was so internalized. I couldn't even visually see who was in front of me. My own body was hijacked by my mind, because I had just had these shovels, and I had dug into myself so much and never realized that I was negatively impacting my body, and I never got any help. And that's my biggest thing. Why I do what I do, what my mission is. No one deserves to be left behind. I don't care if you're 60 years old. I don't care if you were 10 or 20, you have a voice. And my biggest thing is a lot of people are so blind to the fact of how many young men go through this, how many young men are molested by family members. That it's, you know, the future is female is something that I'm involved in, and I cannot wait to get that started, and we'll have to talk more about that later. But I want to be inclusive. That's what I'm about as a person, because the kingdom of heaven is filled with everyone who Christ loves and who loves Christ. So me as a good Christian, I'm supposed to be arms wide open to everyone. I don't want to just be inclusive to one person. I want to be that inclusion for everyone that needs that, you know, to clean their battle wounds. And it's such a sad thing that we are in a world where people are so miserable. And I want to put a dent in that in the most positive way possible. And I'm so excited to do that. I'm overcoming, you know, my PTSD, and literally 2 months ago was the first time I ever took a shower at home alone.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people would go, okay, what's the big deal with that? But I would make sure my husband had locked the door 8 times before he got in bed.
Mm-hmm.
And then he would lock our bedroom door. And then I had to sleep with the light on. I don't think my husband had slept in the past 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
And for me to have the courage to say, today is the day that I'm going to take a shower alone.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone who's going through that type of thing, anything you've ever been through, whether it's a domestic abuse relationship, you know, sex trafficking, like Jody has been through, rape, molestation, the fear that you live in, anytime, it's turmoil, it's hell. So it was so empowering to stand in a shower and not cry out of fear.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a milestone for me. And I've taken that into what I'm incorporating into my long-term goals. Just like speaking with you right now. I'm so excited to internationally have a conversation. That is a godsend that I even know who you are. It was so funny before we started. I said, guys, I just need you to pray for me because I'm so nervous because I was going through your website and I was like, I love this guy. Like, he has so much to offer and I'm so excited to get to know him. And it's been very intimidating for me going into the ring with, like, when we went to the Les Brown event. Everyone there was over 40 years old. Mm-hmm. And I was 19 years old. So I was terrified. But it's just, we're in the business of servitude.
Yeah.
And people are mistaken when they think we are in the business of running our mouths or any type of way to go out of money. Because any good speaker, any good person that is out to change a life is a servant. Absolutely. Just like Jesus Christ was. And that I could care less about any type of bill that I incorporate, any type of money that goes into my bank account. It is about that servitude and someone being able to sleep at night knowing they're worthy. So that's really just what my mission is.
Wow. And now you're being connected with Ona Brown, with Les Brown, and that changed your life a lot. And you were pushed onto the stage and were right to speak.
Yeah, I was. It was so funny. I looked at Ona and I was like, I am not getting on stage. I got in the very back of the line. And there's this funny verse that I've always remembered since that moment. And God kind of whispered in my ear about that. And I'm not the type of person to lie about that either. But the first shall be last and the last shall be first. Mm-hmm. And I was so insecure and so broken in that moment. God was like, it's okay that you want to be last, baby. Mm-hmm. It's okay because I've got a plan for you. Mm-hmm. I've got a vision for you. Mm-hmm. I've known you in the womb. And no matter how much you run, no matter how much you go through, no matter how dirty you are, the first shall be last and the last shall be first. So you can get in the back of that line. But your ass is getting on that stage and you're going to tell your story and you're going to own it. So like I said, I got on that stage. I looked everyone in the eye and I said, I'm about to cry a lot. Mm-hmm. And then I told my story through tears. But it was the most empowering thing I've ever experienced. And there was this gentleman. I went to the bathroom to clean my face off because, oh man, I was crying. My scare was running everywhere. I was so embarrassed. And when I came out of the bathroom, I don't know if you're familiar with Obon Bowen, but if you're not, you have to look into him. He just wrapped his arms around me and he said, I saw my daughter up there.
Wow.
Something that you did inside of me just lit a fire under me. Mm-hmm. And I have to have more of you. I'm looking for someone to mentor your age. You're exactly what I'm looking for. And it's crazy because I'm here for this random reason and God moves in miraculous ways. And that's how The Future is Female got kicked off. We are actually kicking that off in February. Mm-hmm. I have my feet planted in something so amazing. The experience to, bring women to Hawaii and also go global is our end goal, which I believe that's definitely God's plan. Mm-hmm. Because the future is female as far as the demographic goes, financially, spirit. There's a lot of things that women have never gotten to incorporate in that it's time. And I want to be diverse about it. And so that was an experience. God just kind of wrapped me up and was like, you don't have a choice. You're doing this. So through that experience, that happened. And I guess looking back on everything, because I'll say, I'm going to be a speaker. And a lot of people will say, they'll say, well, what's your end goal? What are you doing right now? And I'm like, that's irrelevant. I'm going to be a speaker. I'm going to be a best-selling author. Mm-hmm. People will come back and look at this interview and they'll go, holy cow, she wasn't kidding.
Yeah.
I'm going to change people's lives. I am going to sell out. I have that vision, and I know that Christ has that plan for me, because the thing about faith is that God will go and unlock doors you couldn't even foresee.
Mm-hmm.
God will cross the T's and dot the I's of contracts you couldn't even envision or fathom.
Mm-hmm.
So my faith is greater than my fear. And I will move through that, because I lived in Lodabar for too long. And I don't know if you know what that term means in the Bible, but it's a land of no growth.
Yeah.
And for me, I hit my feet every morning and praise God to know that I'm a 20-year-old woman and I'm free. How many other 20-year-olds can we free? How many 40-year-olds need to be free? How many 60-year-olds can we free? There are too many people living in hell and damnation that should not have to suffer anymore. Mm-hmm. So if the slightest bit of me not being embarrassed anymore about being an alcoholic, having a drug problem, hating who I was, hating my body, getting on a platform, being signed with a company that doesn't normally sign plus size models, that's my game plan, is to use that as a platform to get the social eye, because where do people look? Magazines. It's simple. It's about changing the conversation on, I'm a bigger girl, but I also love my body, and Christ made me in his image. So no one can tell me any different. It's about changing the conversation.
Wow. And you stand 5 feet 9 inches tall.
I do, yeah. I do. And I'm a size 16 and I'm happy with it.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. What is that one thing that you would like to share with my audience?
Let go or be dragged. When I started making the choice to either be a victim or to walk into victory, those were two totally different spectrums for me. Mm-hmm. And all I can say is let go or be dragged, because I spent a very small fragment of my life being dragged, and that was too long. So any of you in this moment right now that are older than me, younger than me, and you are being dragged, let go. There are people around you that want to love you and embrace you and change your life, and let us help you, because we are here for servitude. Absolutely. And I'm excited to meet all of you one day.
Emily, it was really a pleasure having you on this show.
Thank you so much.
Ladies and gentlemen, Emily Robbins.